Welcome to Assistedge RPA File Operations Automation webinar. Now, before going forward, let's look at the agenda for this webinar. Firstly, we will understand different file activities present in Automation Studio for different file operations like file open, file search, file merge, etc. Secondly, we will see a full-fledged demo where we are going to use different file operations in an automation scenario. Assistedge Automation Studio enables automation of various file operations using different file activities like file operations, file search, file merge, file split, or file exist. These activities can be simply dragged and dropped in order to automate such simple file tasks. Let us understand these activities in detail with its different fields that are required to be configured as input and output arguments. The first activity which we are going to look at is the file operations activity. This activity offers various file operations capabilities like file create, copy, move, rename, open, close, delete, zip files, unzip files, or to check whether a file exists or not.
Now let's talk about the file search activity. Automate searching of files with the help of file search activity. Here we have different input fields that we can provide. First is the search path. Define the source path to search the files. Then there is search pattern. We can provide the pattern which can be defined as file name .file extension format, followed by an output Excel file path where all the search result will be stored. Also, click on the advanced search link and you can provide different parameters like file size in KBs, creation start date, creation end date, or recursive search. Recursive search is basically that if we select the value of recursive search as false, then the search will not happen in the subdirectories or subfolders of the source path. Likewise, we can also define the range for creation dates to search a particular file. Now, let's move on to the file read act. Automating reading doc RTF files for text data. You have two input fields here. First is the file path. This should be a valid document file. For example, you have D drive documents sample_doc.docs. So you have file name followed by a file extension. Next is the output JSON. The process document output will be available as a JSON string. So user will be able to get the JSON string by assigning the output variable. Let's move on to the file split activity. File split activity automates splitting of file into two or more files. The input fields are file type, input file path, output file path, page, range or sheet names, or override files. Now file type, choose the type of the file to be merged from PDF up to version 1.6, Excel or Word. Input file path, so path with the complete file name and with the extension type are fed as arguments. Output file path, define the file path and the name of the new merged file. You can also provide page range or sheet names in case of Excel files. Also, if one wants to override an existing file, they can check the override file checkbox. The file with the same name will be created. Let's move on to the file merge activity. Automates merging two or more files using the file merge. File merger will basically have file type, file path, output file path, override file options. File type. So we can have a PDF, a Excel or a Word type of a file type, followed by file paths. Of course, you have the file name followed by the extension, can be taken as arguments. Then we have to define the file path and the name, the new merged file. And if one wants to override an existing file, they can click on the override file checkbox.
Now let's discuss a use case, claims management, from the healthcare domain. So Roger is one of the back office agent in the claims sanction department. His daily task includes managing claims document for individual patients for verification. So in usual scenario, claim requires couple of days for verification. These claim files with significant documents are required to be backed up by the claim sanction department by the hospital staff. It requires lot of effort by the staff to manually perform simple file operations. The claim files are backed up by the staff for further verification that has been entered into the system are automatically scanned to show whether they will be rejected or returned based on this data. Then a consolidated Excel is generated which provides a detailed report on user who claimed for health insurance charges is denied or verified. Now for every patient submitting the claim, Roger needs to perform the following task. Search file for a patient. Rename dummy folder directory to patient's name. Move the verification documents in the correct directory. Split the terms and conditions page from health insurance document into a document. Read the claim document. Rename claim file in a particular format using the read content from file. Merge the consolidated claim data file with patient information and generate consolidated yearly report for claim. All this can be easily achieved using the file operations or file activities present in the Automation Studio. Let's discuss all these steps one by one. Firstly, to search file for specific patient, we will use file search activity, followed by rename dummy folder as directory at patient's name using file operations activity, file operation type rename, followed by move the verification document in the correct directory using the file operations activity move. Split the terms and conditions page from health insurance document using file split activity. Read the claims document using the file read activity. Rename claim file in a particular format using the read content from file using the file operations activity. The last, we will merge the consolidated claim data file with patient's information and generate consolidated report for.
Now let us go to the Automation Studio and find out about different input parameters required for file operations activity, different operation type. So let me create a new process and drag and drop the file operations activity. Now in the file operations there are different type of file operations. This operation type will create a new file with the desired extension. So there are two inputs required here. The first is the file path along with the file name and file extension, and the next one is a checkbox, override file. Now when we select this checkbox, it will basically override the existing file with a new file with the same name. We can also do the result mapping here. Moving on to the second operation type. Now the first field it has is the, so obviously we know that this operation type copy will copy a file from one location to another, and the first field is the source path. As the name suggests, this field defines the source location from which the files are supposed to be copied. So this will contain a file path. Now this will have a file path which will have a file name along with a file extension. Now moving on to another field, that is file extension. Now this is of course a non-mandatory field, and the input for this field is the file name along with its extension. Now moving on to the destination path. So as the name suggests, it is the destination location where the selected files will be copied. The fourth field appended parameters. Now, the input for this particular field is the text appended to the name of the file or files getting copied, followed by a boolean value, that is copy from subdirectories. So this is also a non-mandatory field, and here if one selects true, that means that while copying the data from the particular folder or directory, the process investigates all the subfolders and subdirectories for the required file. If likewise the input for this field is false, the process ignores all the subfolders, subdirectories and considers only the files present in specified source location. Moving on to the third operation type, that is rename. As the name suggests, it will basically rename a file or a folder in a particular location. There are two input fields that are required here, that is the source path and the file new name. Now followed by file move. So this will basically move a file or a folder from one location to the other. So we have source path, file extension, destination path and append parameters. So all these fields are already discussed. Let's move on to the file open operation type. Now here it will basically automate to open a file at a particular location with the help of the file operation type open. Now here we have file path and file type followed by optional file password field. Now file path, of course the file path along with the file name and file extension. File type can be of Word, Excel or others. Now if the input is either Excel or Word, then an additional option is enabled, that is file password. Now let's talk about the file operation type save as. Here we have a file type. So here when we click on the drop down button, we have for Word. So either we can select Word or Excel. Now you have a field as open type. So this input field is either existing or new. The existing value indicates that the file is already saved at a current location, and the new value indicates that the file is never saved at any particular location, followed by a destination path. Now let's move on to the file close operation type. So this operation type is used to close any already opened file. Here we have file type. So we can close either a Word file or an Excel file, followed by a file path, that is a file path along with the file name and file extension. Now moving on to file delete. Now you just have two fields here, that is the file path or force delete checkbox. Now of course this will delete a file from a particular location, so you have to provide a file path along with file name and extension. And if you click on the force delete checkbox, then by selecting this checkbox to forcefully delete a file if it's in an open state also. Now let's move on to zip files. So here we have, so this operation will basically automate the zipping of the file. Now we have source path, we have destination path, we have file name. So what is file name? It is basically the input for this field is the name of the zip folder to be created, and we have different type of zip format. Now here by default it is .zip. If you select this particular password checkbox, it will make sure that your zip file is password protected. Let's move on to the unzip files operation type. It is used to automate the unzipping of files. Here we have source path, destination path and a password checkbox if in case you have to unzip a password protected zip file. Moving on, the last file operation type is the file is exists. Automate to check whether a file exists at a location or not. Now over here we have file path as an input field where you provide a file path along with the file name and file extension. So these are all the different file operations activity operation types that are used for file operations. So this is my claims repository input files folder where we have a dummy folder. We have certain Excels that are supposed to be merged to generate an yearly report. We have an individual claim letter provided by the patient. We have different verification documents provided by the patient as well. Now let's move on to the process. Now this process consists of the following steps. It will first search the file for a specific patient. Now what it will generate? It will generate an output Excel which has details of the documents provided by the patient for the verification process. Now moving on to another activity, that is rename folder at the patient. Now in order to synchronize all the folders, we are going to name the dummy folder name as the patient's name so that all the documents for a particular patient are placed inside that dummy folder only. This will rename it in the name of the patient's name, and then we will be moving all the verification documents specific to a patient to that particular folder. Also, we will split the terms and conditions page from a specific claim letter. Then we will read the specific claim document and the output will be stored in the JSON format. Now, further, we are going to rename a particular file in the name of the patient's name so that it is easier to read the content. Now, further, we are going to merge the Excel files to generate an yearly report. Now let's just directly go and test run the process. Come to our claim repository folder, and here you can see all the files that have been generated with test run successful. Now let's see. The yearly claim report will consist of the merged data of different patients claiming the report per year. Then there will be this particular output file generated where whatever files a patient has submitted, all the details of those files will be available. Further, we also now have the Alex claim repository folder where whatever form or documents Alex has submitted are being placed within that particular folder. In this webinar, we learned about file operations automation with its different activities and operations available in Automation Studio of Assistedge RPA. Thank you.